Okay, so we are going to go over the uh, classes, player, basketball player, and height. So hopefully you've had a chance to try those to the best of your ability, and then we will make the team manager together. So we'll start first with public class player. I'm in a Blue Jay project called Team Roster. You may call it whatever you wish. So we need to have information about the player's name, their number for their jersey, their weight, and their height. So we'll say private string name, private int number. Oh, wait. Number is not supposed to be there. I'm sorry. We just need name, weight, and height. Number is in the basketball player. Private int weight. Private height. Height. Now, because our height has two numbers, it would make sense that we would use a class to make it. So whenever you want to store more than one piece of information in a single variable, you either need an array list, or a class. And so I'm going to choose to use a class here. Okay, so it's going to give me an error here, but that's fine. It's because we haven't made that class yet. So we'll make a constructor. And I want to go over a few issues with constructors. First issue. This is a little bit of a problem right now because I can't do that. Because then Java will always look for a variable that's closest to it. So I'm actually setting the name here to itself, and I didn't actually change that name. You can fix this by saying this dot. Anytime I say this dot, Java knows to go to the variable defined for the entire object, what we call instance variables, these variables defined out here. So that will fix it right there. Or you can make these just somewhat different, like p name maybe, or underscore name. I like to use underscores. That's just, I don't know, something I kind of like. It's kind of Python-y, but I like it. But we ideally don't want to have the same word there and there. But if you absolutely desire to have the same word for the parameter as the instance variable, you have to put this dot. Remember, the assignment is from right to left, and we're trying to set the name. So I'm going to set the weight with the weight, and the height with the height. All right. Now we need to make some methods. First method we are going to do is an accessor or a getter that gets the name. So name is private. So if we want to have access to it, we need to have a method. And this name will simply return the name. And how about public int get weight? That returns the weight. Remember, when you write a method, you have to have a return type. So my return, since I'm returning a weight, and weight is an int, my return type is an int. All right, next we'll say public height get height, and that's going to return the height. And again, that line's going to error as well because, we haven't written that class yet. So I think we should write that one next. But we still have a couple more methods. So these are all getters because they return what's there. Now we're going to make setters so that people can change them. So because we're just changing the name or setting it, we're not actually returning anything. But every method except for the constructor has to have a return type, so we say void. I'm not returning anything. Set name, and I'll just say string in this time. Name gets in. Public void set weight, That's a int. So weight gets W. Public void set height. And we're going to take in a new height h, and we're going to set height to it. Now, in my instructions, I used variable names like name, weight, and height for my parameters, but when I write it to implement this interface we wrote, we don't have to match those names exactly. It's our choice. Okay. So this looks pretty good to me. Let's go. We're not going to be able to compile this, though, because we haven't made this height class. Okay, so let's do that. All right, we also have to make a toString, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. I'll come back and do the toStrings. Make a new class called height. And this height class is fairly simple. It just stores information about a height. So public class height. We have an int. We'll round to the nearest integer. So private int feet. Private int inches. And people can now create a height with feet and inches. Okay, next. We need to write just a couple of setters and getters. So we'll say public int get feet, which returns the feet. Public int get inches, which returns the inches. We're going to make it to where we can set these things. So public void set feet. Oh, I need to have a parameter to set it with, though. So that's an int f is what I'll call it. And then we'll say public void set inches. And I think it would be useful for us to add a method that will get what I call the real height. Height is a real number. So let's say public double get real height. So what this would be is if for some reason somebody wanted height, the height as a real number of feet. So we'll return feet plus inches divided by 12.0. Now, if I don't say 12.0, inches divided by 12 would always be 0. Because by default, Java will integer divide if you use two integers. So I say inches divided by 12.0 because there's 12 inches in a foot. So that's going to get my real height. I just thought, we could call this real height in feet. We could do another one called real height in inches. But I just thought that would be a worthwhile exercise. All right. Now, I want to go over toStrings. Okay? Every Java class extends something. So you may not know this, but Java adds that automatically for you. We've talked about how the first line of a constructor is that. The object class takes no parameters, so this causes no problems. So notice that my class compiles just fine when I add extends object. but we don't usually write it in Java. We're not usually that explicit. It's just understood. That's what we call instances of classes objects. Now, for some reason, BlueJ sometimes has trouble when you go back and add something that's missing. So you may have to go in here and just kind of type a little bit to make that catch up. All right. I'm going to show you something. I want to go, let's make a new height. I'm like 6'4". So I'll make a new height. And a toString affects how does your object print or get represented in words. And you'll notice there's our get feet, our get inches, get real height method, set feet, set inches. But we also have some things inherited from object. Some interesting things here you can play with, like get class. You'll notice that it's like, should say it's of class type height, but whatever. I don't know, you have to do weird stuff with that. The ones I want to talk about right now is this toString. Notice that every object automatically inherits a description of itself. Let's run it. Height at 79B2C7E0. That is a hexadecimal location, if you will. It's kind of like that. It's like a hash code in the memory. So this is not very interesting description of height. So whenever you inherit a method, whenever you subclass something, which this automatically subclasses object, we inherit all of its methods. So I want to override a method. I want to change it. So I'm going to say @override. Public in the height class, public string toString. Now, saying @override is actually not required, but it's preferred, because then it tells readers of your code that you're overriding a method from the superclass. Also, that @ makes it not just a comment. You know, you could think, why don't we just do a comment like this? But what the @ symbol does is it makes it a comment that Java will actually check and make sure. The reason why is that, like, if I accidentally, I don't know, maybe I think toString doesn't have a capital S. What's going to happen is it's going to tell me you're not actually overriding anything, but you think you are, which could cause a logic error and your program wouldn't work right. So it's good that it checks for you. So we don't want that nasty stuff. We want to return this as a string. We're going to say height. And we're going to add a single apostrophe. Okay. Plus, and we probably have to escape sequence that. Plus inches plus quote, and we definitely have to escape sequence that one. I kind of would like a space, I think, after my height. We could do a dash as well. Cannot find symbol. Oh, height. I'm sorry. That's supposed to be feet. Woo. Fee. All right, feet. Yeah, feet and then inches. Let's try it out. I'll make a new height. And hopefully it toStrings better than it did before. Okay. Well, that didn't look very good. Is my escape sequence going in the wrong direction? I always forget. No, it's not. That's the right direction. Okay, so just after some inspection, when you get the toString, it shows you the extra quote slash here. Don't worry about that. When we print it, it won't show up. It's just BlueJ showing you that it's there. Not sure why it doesn't do it on the apostrophe, but it does it on the other quote. But that's fine. I tested printing it. It looks good. So, all right. So we should be done with the height class. Next, we want to go and let's make the player class have a toString. So we're going to say public. Well, let's override it, actually, because that's good, because we are overriding a method. ToString. So to describe a player, I think what we should have is their name, their weight, and their height. So we'll say return name plus weight pounds. We can say LBS, right? Plus height dot toString. So we're actually going to call the toString on our height since it has a toString. So now when we make a player, we can get something besides just that weird memory address stuff, or something similar to memory address. Okay, that looks good now. I think we're good with the player class. So let's make the basketball player class. So the basketball player class is going to extend player. And I don't think, yeah, you can't just right click on that. You might be able to use this like arrow. So I can use an arrow to collect, oh, no, I'm not really sure. Anyway, you used to be able to do that, but I'm just going to make it from scratch anyway. So new class. Our class is called basketball player. And this class is going to subclass player. So public class basketball player extends player. So when you subclass something, you extend it. Now you're going to notice we're going to get an error really quick. It's going to say constructor player in class player cannot be applied to given types. Required. Java.lang.string, that's string's full name, int, and height. Found, no arguments. Actual and formal argument lists differ in length. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, let's take a look at the player class. The player class constructor requires a name, a weight, and a height, which is a java.lang.string, an int, and a height instance. When you make a class in Java, if you do not write a constructor, Java writes one for you. So right now, before we write it, there's a constructor. The constructor does this. If you're not extending anything, you're extending object, and the object class constructor takes no parameters, so it's fine. So the error we were seeing was written right there on the word class because it had nowhere else to put it, but in reality, the error is there. If you make a constructor but you don't call super, it'll show the error here. But it's the same error because right now, whether you see it or not, Java is putting that code in, and that means I'm trying to, this super is like me saying player and sending no parameters. Okay? Doesn't work. Super. So what do I need to send it? Well, the basketball player needs to take in a string name, a string position. I know some of these people today use numbers, but I'm back in the day when we used words for position. Number, int, weight, height. All right. So what do I need to send to super? Well, I need to send to the super classes constructor the name, the weight, and the height. Now I no longer get that error. Okay, so at this point, I've got my instance variable spelled the same as my parameter. I either need to change the spelling of that, or I can use this. And that will fix my problem. Because if I say position, it'll think I mean the variable that I'm most local to. That's written in my method or my argument list, my parameters. If I say this dot, it knows I mean this one up here. And so I'll just show you this as another way to do this. Not how I usually do it, though. Oh, no, weight was in my superclass. Was it just position and number? Is that all I needed to store? Yeah, I don't need to store weight. All right, let's add some some methods. String public, right? Public string get position. I'll return position. Public int get number, and I'll return the number. All right. Let's make a couple of setters. Public void set position. And I'll just say string p, and position gets p. So I don't have to say this dot, although I certainly can. Got to spell it, though, right? And now we can also change the number. We don't have to, though. We can make our objects immutable, meaning to mutate, to change, non-mutable. These are actually these setters are sometimes called mutators because they mutate the object. If we don't provide it, then I like to think of it as the users of our class have read only, not read and write, so a little bit protected, right? All right, let's override toString for this. Well, you know what? We've already got a really good toString method in the player class that is nicely formatted with the name, the weight, and their height. All I want to do is add a little bit more information to that. So I'm going to say return. I want to call the superclasses toString. So this is different. When you call the superclass method, you say super dot. When you call the superclass constructor, you just say super. Two different supers, two different ways you use them. Calling a superclass's method that you're overriding, super dot. Now, if I wanted to call alternatively, I could redo this myself by just saying I could call get name. Notice I don't say super.getName. Not needed. Because I'm not overriding getName. Remember, if you want to call a method in the class you're working in, you just say the name of the method. If it's a method in the class you're extending, you're subclassing, you just say the name of the method. Because a basketball player is a player, so a basketball player has the getName method. So I could do it that way and completely reconstruct it like so. But instead, I'm going to call the super.toString plus, I'm going to say position. Probably need a space here as well. Plus number. Next, I'm going to say that. Okay. Now we have a basketball player. All right, so we are ready to make our application, the driver class, the team manager. But before we do that, I want to test everything to make sure that all of our logic works out. Okay? So let's look at this diagram. The dotted arrows indicate what we call has-a relationships. A player has a height. A basketball player then has a height. The solid line arrow means is a. A basketball player is a player. And when we say is a, we mean every basketball player is a player. Not every player is a basketball player. That's why the arrow goes in that one direction. Because we could have a soccer player over here, that is a player as well. So dotted arrows mean has a. A player has a height. You can see because they have it as a variable. They have a height. Okay? Bold arrow means is a. I actually prefer to turn off what they call uses. I like the inheritances. I don't always like uses. It's up to you whether or not you want to keep them. Okay. Let's test it. Let's make a basketball player. But in order to make a basketball player, I need to make a height first. So I'll say 6 feet, 4 inches. You say whatever you want. My new basketball player has a name. Jed Wilshire. A position. Point guard. A number. 23, just like Jordan. A weight. Well, that is secret. I'm gonna imagine I was 225 pounds. How about that? That's a good weight that I should be. A height. I'm gonna give it this height right here. Okay, we got a basketball player. We can actually see what it would look like if we printed it. So I'm gonna say system.out.println basket. Looks like it's basketball1. Well, there we go. I think I like the way that's formatted. Looks good, right? Okay. Let's make our team manager class. All right, my team manager is going to have 2 different instance variables. The first it's going to have is a Java util.ArrayList. The next thing it will have is a java.util.scanner. So I'll import both of those because they are not in java.lang. Height is not in java.lang either, but height is in team roster. So when you use an object, you either need to import its class or you need to have that class written in your project folder. Okay. So private array list of type basketball player. And I'll just call it team. Private scanner. And I'll just call it keyboard, or we can call, let's go and spell it out. Keyboard. And I'm not going to be using the static stuff that we did before because I don't usually like it. And I think in this case it makes sense not to. So when we call the constructor, we'll simply initialize team as a new array list. Used to be you had to type basketball player again, but now you can just do that. And our keyboard will make as a new scanner. And if you recall, it's system.in. Okay. We've got a nice little thing that we can use now. All right, so the first method we're going to do is add player. So add player is going to use a scanner to scan in the input. So first I'm going to prompt. So I'm going to say, okay, program user, what is the player's name? Now the player's name could be more than one word. So I'm not going to use next. I'm going to use next line. So string name equals scanner was keyboard dot next line. That will scan in the entire line. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is ask for the player's position. Actually, I would like to look at my basketball player. I'm just going to try and do it in this order. Yeah, position is what I have next. So I'm going to do it in that order because I think that makes sense. So system.out.println player position string name. Again, this position could be more than one word. So we're not going to say next because that only gets one word. Let's say next line, which gets the entire line. After that, we need to know their, I think number was next. So number, that's an int. So I'll say int, oh, no, I need the prompt. System.out.println player number. And that's going to be an int. So we'll say int number equals keyboard dot next int. Okay, next, let's do, we need to ask the user for the weight. Player weight. Which was also an int, I believe. All right, the next thing we ask is their height. That's the last thing we need to get, and we're going to get that in two pieces. We're going to say system.out.println player height feet. Okay. So I think that's all the information we need. So we need to make a new basketball player. So the way we make an object is we say the class name, basketball player. We have to type it, right? Basketball player. P equals new basketball player. And we have to give it all this information. Name, position, number, weight, and height. So, let's make a height first. We could do it inside the constructor, but then it gets kind of confusing. There we go. We got a new height now, and then we'll just give it H. Okie dokie. Last thing left to do, add it to our list, to our player roster. So what's the name of our player list? I think it's called team. So we just have to say team.add P. Y'all ready to try it out? Okay, so we're going to test it. We're certainly not done yet, but we can test our first method. Let's make a new team manager class. And these are instance methods. So, I'm sorry, we're not making a new team manager class. We're making a new team manager object. All right, that's the class. That's the object. All right, we have an add player. Okay, it opens up our terminal because we're printing and scanning. So I'm going to put Michael Jordan, player position. Maybe shooting guard. I can't remember if he did everything, so it didn't matter. Shooting guard. I'll say Sash, or sometimes we call him off guard. Player number 23. Player weight, I don't know, maybe like 225 or 224. We'll say that. Height, I think he's like 6'5". So I'll say like 6 feet 5 inches. All right, and we're done. So now we can go to our team manager. Let's inspect it. And let's inspect that. And it's got some data, so let's inspect. That's the first one. And it looks like it's storing it all correctly. So I just went through some inspecting. So what I did was I went right click to inspect. I inspected the team list, inspected the element data, and it shows that it has all that stuff there. And which is, not very pretty looking, but I think it's working. So let's go back to Team Manager and let's make the print the roster method. So public void print roster. So what I'm going to do is loop through the entire roster. So I'll use a for loop. I'll start with I equals 0. And I'll loop through the entire team size. And I'm going to say system.out.println. And I'm actually going to print out the number of the index. That's going to help me later. And then I will put team.get I. And I don't know if we have to say .toString, but when you print, you sometimes don't have to. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So I'm curious. We may have to come back and add that, but I want to see if we don't have to. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I just wanted to have the index number there so it numbers them off in order. Let's review what a for loop does. When you make a for loop, first you have to create a variable, then you check a variable, then you change the variable. So I'm using I, so I say int I, and I set it to 0. I'm going to loop as long as I is less than team.size. If I have 20 people on the team, then the indices in my list start counting at 0. So the last index in my list would actually be 19. And don't get confused, we're not using index and player number the same, because sometimes people have funny player numbers that they're not like in order. And then it'll do that. So it'll get player 0. Then after that, it increases I by 1. And then we'll check again. So let's go back and let's try again. So let's make a new team manager. Let's add a player. I don't know, or does he play forward? Who knows? What's LeBron? Is he like 32 or something? What's his number right now? What? Well, got a little homage. All right. So he's also 23. Okay. Weight, I don't know, probably 230. Height, I think he's like 6'6". He may be like 6'7". He's a pretty tall guy. All right. Let's add another player. I'm going to add another player. Oh no, what happened? I messed up. It's blank. Oh, I think I know why that happened. Yeah, I know why that happened. We'll have to fix that. All right. But I want to test our print roster. So there it is. It seems like it's working well, except for the fact that we're not getting the name properly on the next one. So we'll have to fix that. All right, so we're going to fix an issue right quick. There is a problem whenever you use next line with a scanner. What if you can imagine, like my blinking pink cursor is on a line. If you're at the end of a line, next line will just return the rest of this line, which is just blank. So you need to clear the line before calling another next line. So anytime I'm going to add a player, this is going to seem weird, but we're just going to clear the line. It's perfectly fine to call next or next int after next line. But if you're going to call next line after a next int, you need to clear the line. Because the last thing we did was the inches when we said next int. The line in the command console is still at the end. So we can just do this. I'm not storing it or anything. I'm just calling it to clear the line. And I usually comment it like clear input line. So that's just a little hang up with scanner. Some input devices are better than that. So we just have to deal with it. Okay. This is looking good. I'm happy with what we got going. Okay. On experimentation, some people are saying that it is better to have it clear the line here. Let's try that. So I'll say new team manager, add a player. Yeah, it looked like it worked fine that time. Yeah, I moved the keyboard.next line just down here after the next int. And then I'll add another player. Call him B. Plays position B. Number 100. Weight 200. 5, 7. All right. So that's going to work better. Let me print the roster, make sure that works still. Okay, cool. All right, we're going to add just a couple more methods, and then we'll make our menu. So let's make a remove. Public void remove player. So we'll say system.out.println player index on roster to remove. And we'll say int index, and we'll say keyboard dot next int. So what that's going to do is it's going to simply get their index, and once we got it, then we can remove it. So we know how to remove, right? We say the list index. Now that actually returns a player. The remove function actually removes and returns what's there. So I'm actually going to say basketball player. And then I can actually give some information. I can say system.out.println removed P. So that's going to show me that I successfully removed something. All right, let's keep going. I mean, we could test that right now if we wanted to, but let's keep going. Let's say public. That's what happens when your fingers are not on the J and the F. Public void edit player. So with the edit player, what we're going to do is we're going to change the player that is there. So I'm actually just going to combine the remove player and this add player is what it's basically going to look like. So first I'm going to ask them what index. Okay. Oops, that's not right. So we'll say player index on roster to edit. So we're going to edit a certain player, right? Then we're going to ask all of their information again. So we can just copy and paste all this. So it's getting all that information again, right? So that we can edit it. But instead of adding, we're going to set. Remember with the list, you can add, remove, get, and set. And also size. So again, all I did was copy from the remove player. Okay, but I changed it from player indexed on roster to remove to edit. Then I copied all the code from the add player, including that keyboard.next line and the making the basketball player. We're ready now to set. So we'll say team.set. First, we have to tell it the index we're going to set, and then we give it the player that we're going to do there. And set also returns something. So I'm going to say basketball player old P, and then we're going to say system.out.println changed old P and I'm actually going to make this a new line. So I'm going to say /n to make a new line. So that's kind of, I could do this. I could say print changed plus old P /n makes a new line. So then it'll go down to a new line. So it's going to show us how the old player and then how we change it to the new player. Okay, we have one more little method to make, and that's going to be to print a player. So public void print player. And so again, we're going to start with this asking them for an index. But instead of player index on roster to edit, it's index on roster to print. And then we'll just simply say basketball player P equals team.get index. Then I'll print that player. So now we can print the information on a specific player on our roster. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to make our menu to make this application work. I'm going to do that at the top because that's going to be the main thing that we're going to do. So public void run menu. And I will say system.out. Well, we're going to do a while true loop. While true. So this will continue forever, okay? Okay, so we have 6 options. And then we'll say int choice equals keyboard dot next int. And then all we have to do is call our different methods based on what choice it was. So if I say int, so if choice is equal to 1, then we simply say add player to call the add player method. Else, if choice is equal to 2, we can simply call the remove player method. Else, if choice is equal to 3, we call the edit player method. Else, if choice is equal to 4, we call the print player method. Else, if choice is equal to 5, we say print roster method. Else, if choice is equal to 6, we're going to break the loop. That will end our true loop. Anything else they put, we're just going to say invalid selection. All right, so in order to make this runnable, we have to have a public static void main. So at the very bottom, I'm going to say public static void main string args. And I'm simply going to say team manager equals new team manager. And then I'll say t dot run menu. So now whenever someone runs this application, they'll be able to actually run the program. So check it out. And that's it. Okay, one more thing though. We still got this issue because we're saying it's that next line. I really hate calling next line after next instance, but we're going to go ahead and clear the line here as well. So that was causing me still a little bit issue. So again, we're just gonna clear the line so that we don't have any issues with. Oh, there we go. Void main string args, and now we just type in. I'm gonna add a player. Hank. I didn't give a last name. Position center. 40. Weight 245. 6 feet 9. Add a player. Bill Monroe. Center as well. Player number 45, I guess. I don't know. Weight 240. 6 feet 11. Let's print team roster. Okay, there we go. Let's edit a player. I'm going to edit index 0 because I'll say player name is. Oh, see, it skipped it again. Yeah, so we need to fix that as well. So, oh, well, all right. Okay, so let's see here. Edit player. When we do see, as soon as we're calling next line, you need to clear it out. So we'll say keyboard dot next line here. Is there any other time I call next? So here, I think we're okay. It's probably a good idea after any next ints to say next line. There we go. Yeah, let's do it there as well. There we go. So that's just going to, because remember, like if you have a number, if they type in a number like 77, next int leaves the cursor right here. And I want it to move down to the next line of code. So we'll just clear it out like that. And then I think that everything should work now. So let's add a player. Jed Wilshire. Position. Point guard. Player number 10. I'm going to add a player. Player position. Forward. 12. Wait. Let's print a player. I'll print player 0. Let's print the roster. All right. Let's edit a player. Changed. Okay. Let's print the team roster. Okay. I'm going to remove a player. And print the team roster. All right. So it looks like it's working pretty well. If we hit 6, it should quit. And there we go. So that's the end of the program. I hope you enjoyed that.